Hello and welcome back to FranklinCovey's On Leadership series. My name is Scott Miller and I serve as your ongoing host and interviewer. Today's a cool day. I get to interview and talk with two of my favorite people, my friends and colleagues from FranklinCovey, Lonnie Moore and Gary McGuey, who serve as the co-practice leaders of our high school education practice. Both are senior consultants at FranklinCovey and authors or co-authors of several books. Lonnie and Gary, welcome to the set.
Scott, thank
Great
you
to have
so
you here.
much.
Thank you, Scott. Kind of a stretch, Gary, but welcome to
Nice to see you.
FranklinCovey's On Leadership set, man.
Thank you.
So excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks.
You've been in the firm for just shy of 2 decades, and Gary, you and I started about the same time, just over 2 decades.
Right, it's hard to believe.
We've had a lot of work together, a lot of time you've spent dedicated to our education practice worldwide.
Yes, sir.
What I'd love to do today is talk about our focus, which is how FranklinCovey's leadership principles are coming alive and transforming specifically high school cultures.
That's correct.
But first, what I want to do is have you take us on your own quick journeys, as I do with all of our guests. Lonnie, let's start with you. Tell us kind of how you got to this role as co-practice leader of our high school focus.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for the opportunity. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah.
Scott, I got started in education. I mean, back in college, I got this vision of being a teacher, and I became a teacher. I was in the classroom for 9 years, middle school, high school math teacher. And while I was there, I had an opportunity to take this course.
I got the creeps there because my high school math teacher, I took her like 3 times Algebra 1.
See, I was a little bit of a different kind of cat when it came to like being a math teacher. Kids wanted to be in my class. It was very different, right? It was very different. So while I was a teacher, though, I had an opportunity to take this course called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Right? People have heard of this.
As professional development.
As professional development, right? And it wasn't within the school district. I had to go to the Chamber of Commerce in my city that I was growing up in to be able to take this course. And it totally changed my vision of what I could do in my classroom. So I started using the content in my classroom. I even hate to say this is going back to the 1996, 1997 time frame. And I started using this content in my classroom, and I said, this is amazing. Long story short, was able to connect with one of our good friends, Chuck Farnsworth, right? And Chuck made this connection, and that brought me on board. And I've been a consultant and trainer, trained over 2,000 workshops here at FranklinCovey over the years, and now it's eventually grown into what we're doing today. Very exciting stuff.
I'm guessing your story is not unique in that a lot of educators who may not have had access to the 7 Habits 10 years ago or 15 years ago adopted it from some sort of corporate sponsored event and then brought it into their personal lives and into their classroom as well.
That's exactly right.
It's a great testimony. Right. Gary McGuey, how about you? What's your journey?
Well, similar to Lonnie's, former educator from Toronto originally, and I moved down to Utah.
That's okay.
I moved down to Utah, and I was an athletic director at a private school called Meridian School, teaching a gentleman named Stephen Covey, teaching his grandchildren, and also Chuck Farnsworth again, who's our common thread here, right? And Chuck basically recruited me to come be part of FranklinCovey. And then helped with the development of the first 7 Habits for Teens program back in 1999. And it just took off from there. And Lonnie and I have just become, continue to grow this and continually work with students and staff and teachers all over the world. So it's just been a great, it's hard to believe it's 20 years.
Yeah, I'm honored to have you both here on leadership. This discussion today is going to be of interest to a broad audience. Probably primarily leaders in the workforce who are looking to bring into their businesses high school graduates with a diverse set of skills, right? Technical skills, as much as sort of what we might call, life skills. And we'll talk a bit about that. Much of our focus on education in the last, almost 25, 30 years has been based on not just Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits book, but his son's seminal book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, which has sold north of 5 million copies, has been used by educators around the world. Lonnie, let's talk a little bit about the impact that teens has had in the classroom. And Gary, let's have you kind of take it a little bit further and tell the Leader in Me story.
Sure. So the 7 Habits of Teens book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, as we have it right there. So this book, Sean wrote this book in 1998, and parents and educators all over the world, kind of like myself and Gary, we started to pick up this book and start to use it in our classrooms.
Professionals as well.
Oh, professionals.
I asked Sean why he thinks because it has cartoons. That's why he thinks that adults like me like it.
It is
so
an
much.
entertaining read.
It is.
It
it's
really
great.
is.
Yeah, for adults also.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're holding the second edition of that, and it's great. And so educators like myself, we started to take this, and there was no curriculum at that time, right? I didn't have a curriculum as a classroom teacher. There was no curriculum that came with this. So we just started to adapt it, and now it's sold millions of copies all over the world. And there's a countless number. We don't even know how many schools schools are actually using this as for sustained silent reading and different. If somebody had to push, I would say that there are probably 4,000 schools within the United States that are using that book in some way.
So in many ways, 20 years ago when this book first came out
Right.
or so, educators were adopting it kind of formally and informally.
Yeah.
And then about a decade ago, Lonnie, it kind of got transferred into what is now the Leader in Me.
Correct.
Talk
Right.
about, Gary, the Leader in Me process.
So quick history. This book came out in 1998. We had designed a one-day workshop called the Student Achievement Workshop.
Okay.
We were going around the country doing one-day 7 Habits Routines workshops, going fantastic. Students loved it. Adults are saying, boy, I wish I had that when I was their age. Just great stuff, but it was an event, right? It was a one-day event, and events kind of go away over time.
Right.
The Leader in Me book was written in 2008 with a strong focus on elementary.
Right.
Now, the pendulum is swinging back up to high school. So we brought the process in. We have brand new content. We're so excited about this because the beauty of the high school model is we turn it over to the students right away. Students own it, they drive it, and the teachers, the adults in the building are more clear of the path people. So it's ready to explode.
So you both, in many roles, right? You've both authored books, you've co-authored books,
Sure.
you keynote, you speak at conferences and at schools around the world, quite frankly.
Right.
And you also now are the co-leaders of our focus on high school youth leadership development, which is also professional development.
It is.
Why did that become your passion to focus on high schools?
Well, I mean, it's going back to the original piece that I was a part of, right? I worked in summer camps when I was in high school and college, and then eventually getting into being a teacher in middle school and high school. So working with teens was where I ultimately wanted to be and where my heart has always been. And when we started working with the Leader in Me grew very organically, as many people know, right? It grew very organically, over 4,000 schools, and the majority of those schools are elementary. But if you think about this, the Leader in Me came out in 2008. Well, here we are, a decade later. Well, those students who were in like 4th and 5th grade are now in high school. And so people have been naturally asking, well, what do you have available now?
Yeah.
They started learning this stuff in 4th grade, but what do we have now in high school? So it's really imperative that we, and that's what our passion is to create this model that really takes leadership to the next level.
And we've taken a step further. We remind everybody 90% of Fortune 100 companies train their employees in the 7 habits. So this high school model, we treat the students as adults. We talk maturity continuum. We use the same language as an adult works, and they love the fact that we're coming with this mature vocabulary.
Let's talk about that, because really in many ways now high schools have the benefit of FranklinCovey's $100 million plus investment in research and development, and now you have high school students that are learning the same types of skills that CEOs are, boards of directors.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's a great soft skill that some call it, with high school students.
So we prefer to use the term leadership skills as opposed to soft skills.
Yeah.
Soft skills have been around for a while, and we get it. People use it. But we want to bring a little more teeth to it. These are leaders. These are life skills, these competencies. And it's interesting that in 2020, the top 3 competency skills that employers are looking for, complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. Those are the top 3 competencies. And it's a great question to ask schools, what are you doing right now to develop your students to provide these competencies? And it's a paradigm shift for some people, because man, we got to kick it up a bit. I mean, and there is a perception gap, because some of these students feel that they're ready for the real life, and then these employers are saying there's a huge perception gap when it comes to leadership skills, where students think they're ready and the employers say they're not ready. Yeah. So we want to develop these skills, provide these life skills for these students.
I would think now more than ever. I mean, I don't think anyone would say the world is calmer and less contentious now than it was a year or 5 years ago.
Right.
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People develops these interpersonal maturity skills that high school students need on their way to college, on their way to work, on their way to summer work. It's an invaluable gift that educators are giving these high school students. Lonnie, walk us through what the process is of how school adopts the Leader in Me 7 Habits content. What's it called, and how does an educator or an employer who wants to sponsor a school or a parent get involved?
Yeah, Scott, a moment ago you were talking about like all the books that we have, like all of the books that FranklinCovey has been a part of creating, and this great intellectual property that is out there. We want to make this all available to high school kids, right? And they're ready for it, and they're ripe for it, and they're looking for it. And so what we've done is we've taken all of this great knowledge and we've put it into these 4 courses that we have. And we have these 4 courses, and the first one's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens.
Right.
That's exactly right. And this is broken into a semester course. It's broken into modules.
So in essence, this is a semester-long high school program taking the teens' content, bringing it to life.
And that's exactly right. And the approach, here's a key word, PBL, project-based learning. So this is not a standard classroom, right? We're not going to go into a classroom and see desks and rows. It's really going to feel very dynamic, very engaging in the classroom. And when kids walk into this classroom, they're like, man, this is going to be great.
So you have a prescriptive process, not just the curriculum, but the environment and the facilitation.
Yeah,
by the
we don't
teacher.
teach this, we facilitate this.
Right.
We don't teach the 7 habits, right? We got to stop thinking rules and rows, start thinking more mission and movement.
Because I look at the content, it's taken directly out of the book.
Totally.
I mean, this is the
Same principles,
content
same language.
that, you know, 6-figure directors are learning in companies around the world.
And as we know, the power of the 7 habits is the common language, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
You know, Scott, there was a point there that to make that when we talk about the our methodology in the classroom, right? And this is the key: is that the content incredibly powerful, right? Nobody's going to doubt that. The content, however, it's the methodology in the classroom. And here's one of our greatest challenges. And this is an area of growth, not just in high schools, but actually in workforce readiness training programs and everything. We have to have a paradigm shift there. We have to look at how can we prepare students, but what is our methodology in the classroom? So no desks and rows, right? This is high engagement. This is project-based learning. It's a new term that I'm throwing out here today for the first time, really, called leader-based learning. Learn by leading. So how do we learn how to be that leader? You're going to get into a leadership role. And this connects right back out into our whole school process, because we see students, Gary said a moment ago, we release it to the students, right? We release it to we put students in leadership roles.
Imagine a student peer facilitating this content to other peers.
I can't imagine,
right?
yeah.
How powerful.
Gary, take us into the classroom setting.
Yeah.
What do you see are the palpable changes when a student completes this semester-long course? Why would an employer want to hire that graduate more than someone who hadn't been through the course?
Well, once again, we're talking about these competency skills. That's just really what we're getting after. The hiring. Corporations don't ask, where'd you graduate from? What was your GPA? They don't ask those. They want to know, are you reliable? Do you show up? Do you work well with others?
Are you trustworthy?
Are you trustworthy?
Right.
And that's what this is
responsibility.
all about.
Right. Yeah. So when they finish the course, do they leave with a certificate or a credential of some sort?
Well, you know, Scott, that's really where we're working toward. And the answer is yes. And we want students to go through a series of learning, right, the courses, and we want them to walk away with some sort of a credential. And we want them to bring this credential to potential employers. Imagine coming to an interview and a student hands you this credential that says that they're already FranklinCovey certified in these particular areas. Could you imagine?
You would immediately know certain things about them.
Right.
You would know that they at least knew the concepts, had the language, had a sense of urgent versus prior, important, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Intelligence test there.
Yeah.
And know, have a long-term vision for themselves, how to work with others. They're crucial skills. You're exactly right.
Well, we're working with various schools. A good example is in Bowling Green, Kentucky. The Chamber of Commerce is funding this whole process. We're working with 5 high schools there and all the elementary and middle schools. But with the high schools there, why would they bring this to high schools? We want to hire these students. And the chamber there, they know the exact number, how many jobs are open right now in Bowling Green.
Right.
And they want to hire these students, and they want to give them these life skills.
And Scott, there are a lot of other examples, right? Bowling Green is a fantastic example. One other success story, Vicksburg, Mississippi. You wouldn't really think, right? Vicksburg, Mississippi, years ago, they happened to see Stephen Covey. He spoke at the National Chamber of Commerce meeting. And from there,
how long ago? 10 years ago, I think.
At least 10 years ago. And there happened to be somebody from Vicksburg, the president of the Vicksburg Chamber of Commerce happened to be there.
Yeah.
Well, she said, this Leader in Me thing is going to be the thing. Well, now every single school in their district is implementing the Leader in Me, and their community just passed a bond for like $83 million, and she attributes it to much of the impact of the Leader in Me and the mindset of the local community. So, and now you even, when you go to that community now, you see it's from the chamber, it's actually the mayor. I mean, I know the mayor of Vicksburg because we go there so much and we work with those schools. So don't think of the Leader in Me as just a school
Is there an
improvement.
airport in Vicksburg?
There's not. You got to fly to Jackson and drive 45 minutes.
It's a lovely drive, right?
Yeah, it's a lovely drive.
Yeah. Tell me about the process beyond the high school student. Are the educators, the principal, the teachers, you said they co-facilitate, Is it mainly a curriculum for students, or is it also a professional development opportunity for the school leaders?
No, we take the whole staff through this professional development. We take them all through 7 Habits.
Prior to the students going through?
Exactly. 2-day 7 Habits. And you know what's interesting? Our first engagement is called Leading Results, and we bring 8 to 12 students and 8 to 12 adults together. We have this leadership visionary discussion. They understand the process. We see how does this align with other initiatives. And then we take the adults through a 2-day 7 Habits. And what typically happens, the students, it's 8 to 12 students, also join the adults. And it's a beautiful dynamic. So now they make connections to these principles embodied in the 7 Habits. And what the challenge for the adults in the building is to model the principles.
Right.
That's all we're asking.
Right. Because pretty soon, the students are going to know, and they're going to call the teachers
Without
out on
a
the
doubt.
behavior when they're not living the content.
You're going to tell me about being proactive,
Right.
Mr. Reactive? I don't
Right.
think so.
Right.
Yeah, and this happens because the students happen to be at the same 7 Habits training. Imagine a big training there, 80, 100 people in there, and then suddenly there are these 12, 16, 17-year-olds that are sitting there. And teachers are like, what's going on? Why are they here? We treat the students just like adults.
And
How
they-
respectful, huh?
They blow the adults out of the water.
Wow,
They're
wow.
just so on
So
spot. Yeah.
this program, which I'm very grateful for, has enormous reach worldwide, right? It's the largest weekly newsletter dedicated to leadership. Millions of people watching it, thousands of subscribers.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
You have lots of principals. You have teachers, parents,
Yeah.
business owners watching today that are thinking, I would love to bring this into my local school where my daughter or son is, or yes, my business recruits students every month and week out of high school to work. What is the process for a business owner or a parent to say, I want to bring this into my school? What's the first step?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first steps is maybe connect with somebody at FranklinCovey or connect directly with somebody at the school. Connect with a principal of the school. Connect with perhaps there's a PTA, a parent organization within a school. And that's really how the Leader in Me has grown the way it has, because parents pick up the Leader in Me book and they'll go to a principal and they'll say, hey, I was reading this book. It sounds amazing. Here it is.
If someone read the Leader in Me book, that would be the best way to get an understanding for the high school program right now.
Well, probably
the teens book.
Yeah, probably the teens book and
Okay.
even the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book. I think the Leader in Me book is going to be a great book to read to really wrap your head around the whole process and the whole reach of it. But if you want to be more specific around what's going on at the high school level, probably looking at the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, and really the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, as well as 2 other books, The Speed of Trust, as well as the 4 Disciplines of Execution. And we have
all this content's integrated into the process.
Over a 3-year process.
It is.
3-year process. And Gary, typically our high schools funding this through their own budget? Is it usually by corporate sponsors? What's the typical model?
Yes and yes and yes.
Yeah.
Grants, opportunities there. Chambers are we're finding in high school more and more chambers are valuing this and they want to help out.
Right.
Contribution. They see the value in this, so that's happening more and more.
So if I was a small business owner or a leader in my community, I might get with the principal, maybe the Chamber of Commerce, and kind of figure out how to work with FranklinCovey.
Yeah, connect with FranklinCovey
pursue.
Education
Yeah, I think once businesses understand the outcomes that come from the implementation of this model, and we get students who are graduating with this credential that we're speaking about, business leaders get super excited about it. They're like, oh my gosh, you're doing what I have to do when I get these employees.
Right.
So if you can have them kind of employability, if they can be employee ready right when they come to me, that helps. And in a recent survey, we saw the U.S. Chamber Foundation said that 92% of people who come into the workforce, they need work. They're not prepared. So 92% are not quite ready. They don't have the work skills necessary.
Even though
Moms
they
and
may
dad,
think they are.
Yeah.
No.
What's that?
They may think they are ready, and they realize they're not.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's take this a bit personal. You've both been teaching our content for 2 decades, a day shy of 2 decades.
Yeah, correct.
How many 7 Habits work sessions have you facilitated?
Gosh, it's over 2,000 workshops. I think 7 Habits specifically, it's probably
Over
in
1,000.
Well over 1,000,
Wow.
sure.
And Gary, same for you? More?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure the exact number, but
What do you struggle with the most when you're living and modeling the 7 Habits? What's your
Scott,
flashpoint?
you're kind of getting me here, because if my wife's going to watch this, and it's habit 5, Scott.
Yeah, of course.
It's habit 5. Seeking first to understand, then to be understood. I've got so many thoughts going on in my mind all the time, and it's hard to turn my mind off and just totally empathically be there. And so I think that's a challenge that I find.
In your experience, which of the 7 Habits do the high school students struggle with the most?
Well, I think a lot of them, it is habit 5. They will say habit number 5, but a lot of them are really concerned with habits number 2 and 3, right? Because they're struggling with, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Where am I going to go to college? What's my vision for where I'm at? And someone will say they have this vision, but they fall down on the execution of getting them where they need to be.
Or it sounds good. I think someone else wants them to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Gary, how about you? Which of the habits do you think you struggle with the most?
Probably habit 5 as well.
Yeah.
You know,
It definitely is.
Yeah. Hey, I'm talking right now. Yeah.
You're Lonnie. You're not helping.
Yeah. You know, we facilitate this content all the time, and sometimes you get, and I think most people say that when the DNA gets involved, all bets are off, right? We're not as patient. And it's a
when
challenge,
humans get involved,
right?
All bets are off.
All bets are off, yeah. And then with the students, what I found with high school students, habit 1, they really resonate with habit 1. They love to talk about habit 1, this habit of personal responsibility, which is huge, right? The one thing we know is the difference between high school and college. College is more around time management and habit 3 stuff, but with high school, the biggest struggle I found, or not the struggle, but they really connect to is habit 1, which is good.
Which I'm thinking is a vital skill for the workforce. When someone's looking to interview or hire someone for whatever job, having someone that's got a context for personal responsibility,
accountability, choice, responsibility, right?
Right. Knowing that you're responsible for your own results, you own it, it's up to you, and stop blaming others is a massive, I said soft skill, but it's a life skill.
It's a life skill, it's
for
a
everyone.
leadership skill.
Yeah, for sure.
What's been your biggest insight on your own leadership journey as you've been exposed to FranklinCovey's content, Lonnie? What's been the biggest pivot point for you in your career, what you've learned from all of our content?
Well, I think for me, I mean, there's the personal application, and sure, that's big, and the application of habits 2, 3, and having that vision and staying focused on being able to execute. I think it pushes our thinking deeper into the future, right? And so I get a lot of kind of energy from that, but where I really get more energy is by sharing it with others. And to have a student that might come up to you and say, oh my gosh, this has changed my life. And this has happened over and over is not just, it's not about me, it's about them. It's about the student. It's about that teacher. And when they have these aha moments and they begin to go inside out and they start looking at their circle of influence, and they're saying, oh my gosh, you know, that whole see, do, get model that we often talk about, that I see myself differently now because of this experience that you've led me through. Man, it's almost, you almost tear up when you start to see the impact. And kids are desperate, right? Stephen always said, you know, the greater the pain, the greater the need. And Scott, there's a lot of pain out there. You know, there are kids that are dealing with depression and all kinds of challenges. And we have to be there for them. I mean, we truly believe, Garrett, that we have like this moral obligation to really do this. And I can only speak for myself, Scott. I'm doing this because we have to help.
I feel it, yeah.
We really have to help.
Gary, how about you? Of your 20 more years of experience, what's been the biggest insight, inflection point for your own learning and career?
Well, one that jumps out as you pose that question to Lonnie, that students have never let me down. Never. You know, you go to these workshops with these students, these learn shops, I like to refer to them with these students, and they just inspire you. They say these things like, where'd that come from? They give you goosebumps every day. Last week, I was up in a place called Chateauguay, New York, near the Canadian border, and this 9th grade student came up to me, and he was on this leadership team, but you could see he, talking earlier during the day, he was talking about, how he's bullied and at times growing up, and he had, and he went to the principal, because she came up to me in tears afterwards, and he said to her, I finally feel like I'm important today after this day, just one day. And we hear this all the time, all the time. You know, we're in England. The young lady, what was her saying about being a brick in the wall that no one would ever notice? Now I feel. So it's all around mission. And one of the a question I like to pose, or reflective question, do our behaviors match our mission? It's a very powerful question, isn't it?
Especially at the high school level.
And we get to do this every day.
Gentlemen, I think what you're doing is very noble. You've dedicated your entire careers and lives to education, and now bringing these necessary, vital, must-have workforce skills to high school is phenomenal. I no doubt there are lots of parents and business owners today, looking on the website to figure out what to do. Buy the 7 Habits for Teens. Buy the 7 Habits. Buy Leader in Me. Get a good sense for it. Meet perhaps with your principal, perhaps your favorite teacher. Work with the local Chamber of Commerce. The website, what's the best website to go to learn more about it?
Well, just go to leaderandme.org.
Leaderandme.org.
Yeah, and you'll be able to navigate around from there to a high school site.
High school.
Right.
Yeah.
And if a parent or a local business wants to bring you in,
Yeah.
either of you, for like a day of professional development or a keynote, you're available for that. Gary, talk about that process.
Yeah, well, we have a system. We have client partners, educational client partners who would help with that. Probably the easiest is to call the FranklinCovey education number, and then people will help, and we would love to. I mean, this is what we do. We do about 200 days a year.
Who's the better speaker?
Yeah. Well, Gary, he's a poem guy, He's
Poem
gonna
guy.
He's gonna drop some poetry.
Wow, look at
on
that.
you,
Yeah.
And I tend to come with the humor. People think, I'm gonna bring the humor.
You know what the key to comedy is? Ask me what the key to comedy is.
Not poetry.
Timing.
Not poetry.
Timing.
Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks,
Wish
Scott.
you the best of success.
That was great.
Really
Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
you all for joining us today. How inspiring, right? I mean, two gentlemen who've dedicated their entire careers to educating students and now focus at the high school level. And we'll see you back here next week on Leadership. As always, you can access this on all your favorite podcast channels. And we are the largest now subscription-based leadership newsletter in the world. If you're not subscribed, go to FranklinCovey.com, click on the On Leadership button, and invite all of your friends, colleagues, and families to subscribe as well. It comes out complimentary every Tuesday via email. Thank you so much, and we'll see you back here on Leadership next week.